I always thought I had the life most people dreamed of. At 36, I had built a career I was proud of, married a man who seemed perfect, and had a father who was my anchor. Everything seemed stable, predictable, comfortable, just how I liked it. My father, Robert Caldwell, had founded Caldwell West, a successful business he built from the ground up. It wasn't just a company, it was everything to him, and to me. My father wasn't just a parent, he was my mentor, my protector, my confidant. When I lost my mother at 20, he became my whole world. We relied on each other for everything. When he told me I could handle anything, I believed him. After all, we had each other. But as I would soon find out, nothing could prepare me for the moment when the one person who had been my entire foundation was gone. It started subtly at first. My father was a rock, but I noticed little things that didn't sit right with me. He seemed a little more tired, a bit slower. When I asked if he was feeling okay, he always shrugged it off. "It's just stress," he'd say. "I'm getting older." But I knew deep down something was wrong. It wasn't long before he was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors gave us the worst news we could have imagined. It was advanced, and there was very little they could do. 4 months. That's how long they gave him. It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. I spent those months juggling the impossible, grieving yet trying to be strong, trying to keep everything in balance. I still had my job to manage, still had a marriage that needed attention, but nothing compared to the weight of watching my father decline. I had always seen him as invincible, and now he was fading away. In the last few days, he took my hand and told me, "Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Don't let anyone take what's yours. This company, my work, it's all yours now." I held his hand, tears streaming down my face, not wanting to let him go, knowing that when he did, my life would change forever. And when he passed away in his sleep, it was exactly as he had feared. Everything changed. I was lost. The hardest part? It wasn't just losing him. It was the idea of learning how to live without him, how to navigate this new reality that didn't have him in it. I met Andrew at a marketing conference in Chicago. I was working the event, and he was a keynote speaker. The moment he started speaking, I was captivated. His confidence was magnetic, his words so smooth and persuasive, I couldn't help but listen. There was something about him, something that made me want to get to know him better. After the talk, I approached him, and we ended up talking for hours. He was charming, witty, and so easy to talk to. I found myself completely drawn to him. In the days that followed, we exchanged numbers, and soon enough, we were seeing each other regularly. 2 years later, we were married. It felt like everything was falling into place. My father, the one constant in my life, walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes, proud of the woman I had become. And as I looked at Andrew, I thought, this is it. This is my life now. It was the happiest day of my life, or so I thought. From the very beginning, I tried to get along with Andrew's mother, Evelyn. I could tell she wasn't exactly thrilled about me, but I kept trying. I invited her to dinners, sent flowers, made an effort to connect. But Evelyn? She remained distant, cold, as if nothing I did would ever be good enough. It bothered me more than I wanted to admit, but I pushed it aside. I had Andrew, and that was all that mattered, right? But I couldn't ignore the little things, like the way Evelyn would make comments under her breath when I wasn't around. One night during our rehearsal dinner, I overheard her talking to Andrew. "She's nice, but she doesn't look like CEO material." Her words stuck with me, stung me more than I wanted to admit. I thought it was just a passing thing. I tried to push it out of my mind, but the truth was I felt like an outsider. I wasn't sure if I would ever truly fit into Andrew's family. And worse, I wasn't sure if I even cared anymore. But Andrew? He was different. He was my partner, my equal. I thought I could rely on him. I thought we were a team. But even in the good moments, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When my father was diagnosed with cancer, everything I thought I knew about life started to unravel. One minute, I was sitting beside him, chatting like we always did. And the next minute, I was in a hospital room, listening to the doctor give us a prognosis I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't just cancer, it was aggressive, and the doctors didn't sugarcoat it. 4 months, maybe less. My world was shaking. I couldn't believe it. How could the man who had been my rock, the person who had built everything, just be gone? In those final months, I found myself at the hospital more often than not, desperately trying to hold on to whatever time we had left. Andrew, who had always been so present, seemed distant. At first, I thought maybe he was just overwhelmed. I understood that. But it wasn't just that. It was like he was physically there, but mentally checked out. He spent more time on his phone, texting, making calls, trying to take care of logistical matters instead of being with me, or worse, with my father. He wasn't the partner I needed. I needed Andrew to be there for me, to be there for my father, and yet I felt alone. I couldn't bring myself to confront him about it. After all, I didn't want to be selfish. It was hard enough knowing that my father was slipping away. But there were nights when I sat in the hospital room, staring at Andrew, feeling more distant from him than I'd ever felt in our marriage. My father fought as best as he could, but in the end, cancer didn't care about hope. It didn't care about love or effort or time. It just took him, quietly, in his sleep, just as he had wanted. I don't think I realized the depth of my grief until I stood at his funeral. I was numb, but when Evelyn arrived, late, with her sunglasses still on, when she didn't speak a word to me or even look me in the eye, it was like a punch to the gut. I don't know why it hurt so much, but it did. She left early, and Andrew didn't even seem to notice. It was like the death of my father wasn't enough for him to step outside of his world and into mine. I expected comfort. I expected support. Instead, I got silence, distraction, and a growing sense that I was completely alone in my grief. My dad was gone, and no matter how many people told me it would get better with time, I couldn't see how. I couldn't see past the emptiness of it all. The next day, I received a call from my father's attorney asking to meet with me about the estate. I didn't think much of it at first. My mind was still tangled in a fog of grief. I didn't realize then how that one call would change everything. The meeting with the attorney should have been simple, a mere formality. At least that's what I thought. I was expecting the usual: papers to sign, property details, maybe a few retirement accounts. Nothing that would change my world. But nothing could have prepared me for what the lawyer actually said. I walked into the office with my mind still preoccupied with grief. My father's death was too fresh, too raw, for me to think clearly about anything else. I sat down, and the lawyer handed me a folder. He looked at me with such serious eyes. I knew immediately something wasn't right. "Rachel," he said softly, "your father left everything to you." My breath caught in my throat. "Everything?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "What do you mean, everything?" He opened the folder, and I stared down at the papers inside. The company, the properties, all of his accounts. After taxes and fees, the total estate is valued at just over $35 million. I froze. $35 million. The number seemed to echo in my mind, growing louder and louder, but it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like a gift. It didn't feel like something I should be grateful for. Instead, I felt hollow. This wasn't money from a lottery or an unexpected windfall. This was my father's life's work. It was everything he had poured his heart and soul into, and now it was mine. but it came at a price, the price of losing him. And I wasn't ready for that. I sat there in the attorney's office, my hands trembling, barely able to process the enormity of what had just been handed to me. This was my inheritance, but in many ways it didn't feel like a gift at all. It felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. That night, I spread the documents across the coffee table. I still wasn't sure how to feel, but I knew I had to tell Andrew. He walked in and glanced down at the papers. The look on his face was one of surprise, but it quickly shifted into something else, something I couldn't quite place. "So it's true?" he asked, sitting down beside me. "It's really all yours?" I nodded slowly, still stunned by the gravity of it all. "Yeah, it's more than I expected." Andrew smiled, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He shifted, getting comfortable. "Well, we should talk about what to do with it. Maybe buy that place in Aspen you like. And of course, we need to figure out how much to give to my mom." I blinked. "What?" Andrew looked at me as if I was slow to understand. "My mom, Evelyn, we give her half, right?" My heart skipped a beat. "What? Why would we give half to your mother?" Andrew's face didn't change. "She's family, Rachel. She raised me. She's been through a lot. It's only right." I sat there, stunned. My father had just passed away, and Andrew was already talking about dividing up his legacy. My father's legacy. I had been grieving, trying to come to terms with the loss. And here Andrew was, talking about what to do with the money. And Evelyn? His mother, who had never liked me, who had barely acknowledged my father's death, was already in his thoughts. I felt a crack in my heart. The man I had married, who I had trusted with everything, was now focused on how much of my inheritance he could give to his mother. "Andrew," I said slowly, trying to control my anger, "this is my inheritance. This is my father's legacy. Why would we give half to your mother?" He tilted his head slightly, almost as if explaining something to a child. "Because she's family, Rachel. She's your family, too. We need to take care of her." I could feel the anger rising in me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect, about my father's memory, and about Andrew treating the entire situation as if it were a financial transaction, not a personal loss. "She's your family, Andrew," I shot back, trying to stay calm. "Not mine. She didn't even care about my father. She left his funeral early, and she hasn't called me once since he passed. She hasn't even reached out to offer any support. And now you want to give her half of what's mine?" Andrew's face tightened. "Rachel, that's just how she is. She's not good with emotions, but she cares. You think you're the only one who lost someone?" His words hit me like a slap. The accusation that I was being selfish cut deep, but I didn't back down. "I'm not the only one who lost someone, Andrew, but I'm the only one who seems to care about my father's legacy. This isn't about money. This is about respect. This is about honoring him." My voice was steady, but inside I felt like I was falling apart. Andrew stood up, frustration clouding his face. "I can't believe this. You've turned into a greedy person overnight." The word greedy burned through me. The tears that had been building up threatened to spill, but I swallowed them down. I wasn't going to cry for him, not now. "I need some air," I muttered, standing up and walking out of the room. As I stepped outside, I felt a weight lift off my chest, but it wasn't relief. It was something else, something I wasn't ready to admit. The man I had loved was no longer the man standing in that room, and I wasn't sure if I could ever look at him the same way again. After the argument, things between Andrew and me felt off. I thought it might blow over, that time would ease the tension, but it only seemed to grow. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living with a stranger, someone who was far more interested in the money than in mourning the loss of my father. In the days that followed, Andrew became more distant. He spent his time making phone calls, talking to lawyers, making sure everything about the inheritance was lined up. I couldn't help but notice the way his eyes would light up whenever the topic of money came up. It was subtle, but it was there. A glimmer of something greedy. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny it anymore. The most unsettling part, though, was how he would brush off my emotions. Whenever I'd try to talk to him about my father, about how I was feeling, Andrew would change the subject or offer a shallow comment to move things along. It was as though he couldn't understand the depth of my grief, or worse, he didn't want to. One night, I sat on the couch, looking at the papers from my father's estate spread out before me. I felt overwhelmed by it all. Andrew came in, glanced at the documents, and immediately started talking about how we could invest the money. "We could buy that cabin in Aspen you like," he said, his voice casual, as if we were discussing buying a new couch. I didn't respond at first. I was still processing everything. But I couldn't ignore the fact that it felt like he was already planning how to spend it. Not on my father's legacy, not on anything that mattered, but on things. He sat down beside me, a smile creeping onto his face. "And of course, we'll need to figure out how much we're giving to my mom. She'll want her share." I could feel the blood rush to my face. "What, Andrew, are you serious?" He didn't seem to notice the shift in my tone. He just nodded, looking at me with that same calm expression. "It's only fair. She's family and she's been through a lot. She should get a piece of the pie, too." I stood up, the frustration boiling over. "I can't believe this. You want to give half of my father's legacy to your mother?" Andrew blinked, as though he couldn't understand why I was upset. "It's only fair, Rachel. She raised me. She's been there for me. And I've been there for you, Andrew," I snapped. "I've been there for you, too. I lost my father, and all you care about is dividing up the inheritance, like it's some kind of business transaction. This is my father's life's work, and you're treating it like it's a cash grab." His expression hardened, his patience wearing thin. "You're being selfish, Rachel. You know she's family. I'm trying to take care of everyone, and all you're worried about is what's yours." I felt like I had been slapped. Selfish? Was I being selfish for wanting to hold on to something my father had worked for? For wanting to keep what he had built as a legacy, rather than just a pile of cash? "Don't call me selfish," I said, my voice low but steady. "You're the one acting greedy. You're the one who only sees dollar signs, and I won't let you take what's mine." Andrew stood up, his voice rising. "You don't get it, do you? This is about family. We're supposed to share. You're acting like a hoarder." The word hit me like a punch. A hoarder. I didn't even know how to respond. I could feel the tears building behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'm not a hoarder, Andrew. I'm protecting what's mine. What's my father's." His face twisted in frustration, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something ugly behind his eyes. "I don't know who you are anymore, Rachel. You've changed." I couldn't stand to be in that room for another second. I walked out, needing air, needing space from the man who no longer felt like my partner. For the first time in our marriage, I realized that I wasn't just fighting for my father's legacy anymore. I was fighting for myself, for the woman I used to be, the woman who had once trusted the person sitting next to her. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't trust him anymore. The man I loved, the man who had once promised me we were a team, had turned into someone else. A man who cared more about money than the woman he had vowed to love. I thought, after that night, things might calm down. I thought Andrew and I would somehow find a way to bridge the gap between us, to come to an understanding. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Days went by, and the tension in our home only seemed to grow. Andrew, once again, retreated into his world, making phone calls, checking his messages, and talking to his lawyer like nothing had happened. The man I had married, the man I had trusted to be my partner, was more concerned with logistics, money, and securing his own interests than with the emotional fallout of what was happening between us. Every time I tried to bring it up, he would brush it off. "We're just being practical, Rachel," he'd say. "It's about planning for the future." But it wasn't about the future. It was about control. And Andrew's attempts to make me feel guilty for wanting to protect my father's legacy only made me more certain that I couldn't trust him anymore. One evening, I could no longer hold back. I needed to confront him, to finally put everything on the table and make it clear where I stood. I wasn't going to let this simmer any longer, wasn't going to let the lies and the manipulation continue. "Andrew," I started, my voice shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of everything I had been carrying inside me. "We need to talk." He didn't look up from his phone. "About what?" I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "About us, about what's happening to this marriage, and about this money." His eyes finally met mine, but there was no empathy in them, no recognition of what I was going through. Just that cold, calculating look that I had come to associate with his growing obsession over the inheritance. "You still want to talk about this?" he asked, his voice low, as if he were talking to someone he didn't want to engage with. "Rachel, it's just money. We can work through this." "No," I said, my voice firm. "It's not just money, it's my father's legacy. And it's not just about what we do with the money. It's about how you and your mother have treated me since he passed. Like my grief doesn't matter. Like all that matters is who gets what." I could see the shift in his expression. For the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of guilt, but it quickly vanished behind a wall of frustration. "You're being unreasonable, Rachel," Andrew snapped, standing up and pacing around the room. "I'm just trying to make sure we're doing this the right way. We're supposed to share everything, remember? Family takes care of each other. I'm trying to take care of you." "Take care of me," I laughed bitterly, the anger rising in my chest. "Andrew, you don't take care of someone by treating them like a walking paycheck. You're treating my father's death like an opportunity to get rich. And you want to give half of my inheritance to your mother, a woman who couldn't even be bothered to show up for my father's funeral. You think that's okay? You think that's what my dad would have wanted?" Andrew's face flushed with anger. "You think you're the only one who lost someone. You're acting like you're the only one who's hurting right now. What about me, huh? What about my family?" I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "What about my family, Andrew? My father?" My voice was shaking now. "I just lost the one person who was always there for me. And all you care about is making sure you get a piece of the pie. You're not even thinking about the fact that my father is gone and that I'm trying to figure out how to live without him." Andrew took a step closer, his face now inches from mine. His voice was sharp, filled with frustration. "You're being so selfish, Rachel. You're making this about you when we're talking about something much bigger than just you." "I'm making it about me?" I said, incredulous. "Andrew, this is about me. This is about my father's legacy, about honoring what he built. And it's about you and your mother trying to take it all from me." For a moment, there was silence. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. I realized that nothing I said would get through to him. Nothing would change the fact that Andrew was no longer the man I had married. "You know what, Rachel?" he said, his voice quieter now, but still laced with bitterness. If you're going to be this way, if you're going to be so difficult, then I don't know what else to say. You've already made up your mind about this. You've already decided who you want to be." I shook my head. "No, Andrew, you've made up your mind. You've made it perfectly clear that this isn't about love. It's about money, and it's about control. And I'm done. I'm done pretending this is something it's not." And just like that, the weight that had been sitting on my chest for so long finally lifted. I knew then, with complete certainty, that I had made the right decision. I was no longer fighting for a marriage that had already fallen apart. I was fighting for myself, for my father's legacy, for my future. After the argument with Andrew, I thought things couldn't possibly get worse. But I was wrong. It wasn't just Andrew who was making everything more difficult. It was Evelyn, his mother, too. I could handle Andrew's coldness, his growing obsession with the money. But Evelyn, she wasn't just cold, she was manipulative. And what made it worse was that she seemed to think that everything in my life, my father's life, and now my inheritance, was hers for the taking. It started slowly at first. I'd get random calls from her, checking in to see how I was doing, or rather, how she was doing. But the more I listened, the more I realized that these calls weren't about me. They were about what she thought she deserved. She wasn't asking how I was coping with the loss of my father. No, she wanted to know when the fun part of inheriting the money would begin. What she could get out of this. One afternoon, I was at home, trying to catch my breath. After everything that had happened, the phone rang. I looked at the screen. Evelyn's name flashed across it. I debated not answering, but curiosity got the best of me. I picked it up. "Rachel, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I just wanted to see how you're doing. I know this must be a difficult time for you, but Andrew told me about the estate. I'm so proud of you. Your father was such a smart man." I gritted my teeth, holding the phone tightly in my hand. "I'm doing fine, Evelyn," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Well, that's good to hear, dear. But since you've come into all that money, I thought maybe we should sit down and talk about how you're going to handle it. You know, real estate investments, maybe even a new home for me. Nothing extravagant, just something nice. I've been looking at a few places, and I thought you might want to join me in the process." The audacity! I couldn't believe it. My father had just died, and she was already trying to involve herself in the fun part of the inheritance. The more she spoke, the more I could feel my blood boil. She wasn't trying to help me through my grief. She was using my father's passing as an opportunity to get what she could. "Evelyn," I said, my voice cold, "I lost my father less than a week ago, and you want to talk about numbers, about buying property? Really?" "Oh, Rachel," she replied, sounding so innocent. "I'm just thinking about the future, and I know your father would want you to take care of family. That's what good daughters and good wives do. You know that, right?" I nearly dropped the phone. Her words were a slap in the face. "Evelyn, with all due respect, you are not my family, and you're not entitled to a penny of this money. You weren't even at my father's funeral. You left early, and you haven't called me once since he passed. You've done nothing but push me away. And now you want to talk about investments. You've got some nerve." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when she spoke again, her voice was sharp, laced with venom. "You always thought you were too good for us, didn't you, Rachel? Well, let's see how long you last when you're all alone, sweetheart." The call ended abruptly. I stood there, the phone in my hand, my mind reeling. How could she be so bold? How could she just treat my father's death like it was an opportunity for her to cash in? How could she call herself in family when she had shown no care or concern for me? But then I realized something. Evelyn wasn't just cold and selfish. She was desperate. Desperate to hold on to whatever she could get, no matter the cost. And that meant she would push as far as she could, using any tactic to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Later that evening, I confronted Andrew. I told him about the call. I told him how Evelyn had crossed the line, how she had tried to worm her way into the estate to take what wasn't hers. "Why are you acting like this?" Andrew asked, his voice defensive. "You know my mom's been through a lot. She's not good with emotions. She's just trying to help." "Help," I repeated, incredulous. "She's trying to manipulate us into giving her money, Andrew. She didn't even call to check on me after my father's death. She showed up to the funeral late, left early, and hasn't even had the decency to offer any sympathy. And now she's trying to take what's mine." Andrew just stared at me, silent. I could see the flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something cold. "She's family, Rachel," he muttered, his voice rising, "and I won't let you treat her like that." The words cut me deep. "She's not my family, Andrew. She never was. And you know it." I stood up and walked away, leaving him in the living room, his face twisted with anger and confusion. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting for my father's legacy. I was fighting for my own peace, my own dignity. And I wasn't going to let Andrew or Evelyn take that from me. Not anymore. After that conversation with Andrew, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had shifted. The man I had married, the one I had trusted to stand by me no matter what, had become a stranger. He wasn't on my side, not anymore. And his silence, his willingness to let his mother manipulate the situation, made it clear that I was fighting this battle alone. I didn't know exactly where to begin, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. My father had worked his entire life to build Caldwell West, to build a future for me, and I wasn't going to let anyone destroy it, especially not Andrew and Evelyn. I made an appointment with a lawyer, someone who specialized in high net worth estates. Richard was calm, professional, and didn't mince words. I explained my concerns, how Andrew was becoming more obsessed with the inheritance, how Evelyn was pushing me, how both of them seemed more focused on money than on the loss we had just suffered. "I need to protect myself, Richard," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose everything my father worked for, and I don't know who to trust anymore." Richard leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of him. "First thing you need to understand is that this inheritance is not just money. It's a legacy. And a legacy is something you protect, not just for yourself, but for your father. You need to make sure it stays intact." I nodded, absorbing his words. It wasn't just about protecting the money. It was about protecting my father's legacy, the years of work he had put into building Caldwell West, the empire that he had created. This wasn't about greed, it was about respect, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. Richard began explaining the steps I could take to secure the inheritance. We discussed setting up a trust to protect the funds, making sure that only I had access to certain accounts, and how to legally prevent Andrew or Evelyn from getting their hands on anything. "Install cameras," he said bluntly, "especially if you're living with someone who thinks they deserve half of everything. It's unfortunate, but you need to protect yourself." The suggestion made me uncomfortable. Cameras? In my own home? It felt extreme, invasive, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized how necessary it was. If Andrew and Evelyn were going to treat my grief like an opportunity, then I had to be prepared. I couldn't trust anyone, not even the man I had vowed to spend the rest of my life with. That night, I began taking action. I locked my office, where I kept all the legal documents related to the estate. I changed every password, made sure that everything was protected. And I didn't stop there. I began moving a portion of the inheritance into a separate account, one that only I could access. It wasn't that I didn't trust Andrew, it was that I didn't trust the situation. I couldn't afford to. I felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders, even though I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Protecting my father's legacy was going to require more than just legal documents. It was going to require strength. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The more I acted, the more empowered I felt. I was taking control. I installed security cameras around the house, nothing obvious, just discreet enough to catch anyone who might try to get too close. It felt uncomfortable, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to be a passive participant in my own life anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Andrew or his mother, take what was rightfully mine. 2 days later, the cameras caught something that confirmed my worst fears. Evelyn had been in my office again, rummaging through my things. She wasn't just looking for a notepad, as she had tried to claim. No, she was searching for something specific. My heart dropped when I saw her trying to access the drawer where I kept the most sensitive documents. I confronted her that evening. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was firm, determined to make it clear that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. "I saw you in my office," I said calmly, my voice unwavering. "You were trying to find the inheritance documents." Evelyn just laughed, that same tight, smug smile on her face. "Oh, Rachel, I was just looking for a notepad. Andrew said you kept extras in there." I didn't buy it for a second. "Next time ask," I said coldly, "and stay out of my office." She didn't flinch. She just gave me that smile, the one that made my blood run cold. "Of course, dear," she said, turning on her heel and walking away, as if she hadn't just tried to steal what was mine. I locked the drawer again, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to let Andrew or Evelyn think they could walk all over me. That night, I backed up the footage from the cameras and saved it twice. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting myself, ensuring that no one could take advantage of me. No one could manipulate me. The next morning, I sat Andrew down. I showed him the footage of his mother going through my office. I didn't need to say anything. He could see it all for himself. I thought for a moment that maybe, just maybe, he'd realize what was happening. But no. His response was chilling. "She was just curious," he said flatly, dismissing it. "It's a lot of money, Rachel. People get curious." "Curious," I repeated, my voice rising. "She was trying to steal it, Andrew. She's trying to manipulate us into giving her what isn't hers." Andrew rubbed his temples, frustrated. "You're being paranoid." "I'm not paranoid," I shot back. "I'm protecting what's mine, our money, our future, and my father's legacy." He scoffed. "You're acting like a hoarder. This isn't how families work." I couldn't believe my ears. "This isn't about family, Andrew. It's about greed. It's about control. And it's about the fact that ever since my father died, you stopped seeing me as your wife and started seeing me as your wallet." Andrew stormed out of the room, but I didn't follow. I sat down on the edge of the bed, feeling the tears come, but I held them back. This wasn't about crying anymore. It was about standing my ground. I wasn't going to let Andrew and Evelyn take everything from me. I wasn't going to let them ruin my father's legacy. And I wasn't going to let them manipulate me any longer. It was time to protect myself. I thought, after everything that had happened, things couldn't possibly get worse. But just when I had given up on Andrew completely, he began to change again. This time it wasn't cold indifference. It was an attempt to win me back with affection. A calculated softness that felt anything but sincere. One evening, a few days after our confrontation, Andrew walked through the door with a bouquet of flowers. I blinked, taken aback. It had been so long since he had made any gesture like this. In the past, it would have meant something, but now it just felt wrong. "I thought you could use these," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "I know things have been tough." I stared at the flowers, confused. This was the same man who had practically ignored my grief, who had pushed me to the side, who had treated my father's passing like a mere inconvenience. And now he was offering me flowers? "Thanks," I said, my voice flat. I wasn't sure how to react. I wasn't sure I wanted to accept any of his kindness, if it even was kindness. It felt too forced, too out of place. The next night, he cooked dinner for me. This was the first time he had cooked in over a year, and I had to admit it was a decent meal. But why now? Why this sudden change in behavior? "Rachel," he said, sitting down at the table across from me. "I've been thinking, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with everything. It's been hard, you know. Losing your dad, dealing with the inheritance. It's a lot, but we'll get through it. Together." The words felt hollow. They didn't match the reality of our situation. We weren't getting through anything together. He hadn't been there for me when I needed him the most. And now, suddenly, he was acting like nothing had changed. "I've been thinking," he continued, "maybe we should take a vacation, just the two of us. You know, to get away from all this, clear our heads, and reconnect." The suggestion hit me like a punch to the gut. "A vacation?" I repeated, almost laughing. "Andrew, we can't just go on vacation. My father just died. I'm still grieving. I can't just relax. I don't know how to get away from it all right now." Andrew's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered. "Right, of course," he said, as if he hadn't just tried to avoid the reality of my pain. "I get it. I just thought we could use a break." But it wasn't about the vacation. It wasn't about relaxing. It was about him trying to get back into my good graces, to erase the damage he had caused. He wasn't concerned with my grief. He wasn't concerned with my father. He was concerned about keeping things normal, keeping his life intact. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just felt numb. The man who had once been my partner was now just a stranger, trying to pull me back into a life that felt completely alien to me. The next morning, something strange caught my attention. My laptop, which I always kept shut and locked, was open. The screen was slightly tilted as if someone had been using it. My stomach dropped as I noticed something even more unsettling. There were failed login attempts. Not just one or two, but several. Worse, the camera light had been on. Someone had tried to access my computer without my knowledge. I didn't need to ask who. It wasn't a glitch. It was deliberate. Andrew had been trying to get into my personal files, just as he had tried to manipulate the situation with my father's inheritance. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, about him trying to take everything he could. I confronted him that night. I didn't mince words. "Andrew," I began, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Someone tried to access my laptop last night. You tried to access it." He looked at me, his face paling. "Must have been a glitch," he muttered, brushing it off. But there was no hiding the guilt in his eyes. I didn't believe him. "A glitch? Really? Andrew, you tried to get into my files, didn't you? You've been trying to manipulate this whole situation, trying to access everything I've worked to protect." He rubbed his temples, clearly frustrated. "You're being paranoid, Rachel. It's not like I stole anything. I don't know. It's a lot of money. People get curious." "Curious?" I repeated, barely able to contain my rage. "That's what you're going to say. You're not curious, Andrew. You're trying to take what's not yours. You're trying to manipulate me into giving you access to something I've worked to protect." His response, as expected, was to get defensive. "You're being overdramatic. You're just acting like a hoarder. It's not like we're trying to steal from you." I stood there, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. "I'm not hoarding, Andrew. I'm protecting what's mine. And what's my father's? This is his legacy, but you and your mother are treating it like it's a jackpot." For a moment, Andrew said nothing. He just stared at me, his anger simmering beneath the surface. I could see the frustration in his eyes. He wasn't used to me standing up to him like this. He wasn't used to me seeing through his act. "I can't believe you're acting like this," he spat, storming out of the room. But I didn't chase him. I didn't try to stop him. I knew now that nothing would ever change unless I took control of the situation. I was done pretending. I was done being passive. This wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about my peace of mind, my future, my father's legacy. And I was willing to fight for all of it, no matter what it took. I knew that the time had come. There was no more running from it. No more pretending. The man I had loved, the man I had married, was no longer the same person. His focus wasn't on me anymore. It wasn't on the marriage we had built or the life we had planned. His focus was on the money, the inheritance, and on getting as much of it as he could. And with his mother, Evelyn, now involved, it was clear that there was no way forward. We were headed in opposite directions. It was hard to admit, but it was true. I had been holding on, hoping that maybe things would change, that maybe Andrew would come back to me, to the man I had once known. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to happen. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about something else, something darker, more selfish. And I couldn't live like that. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I wasn't respected, where I wasn't valued, and where I was being treated like a resource to be tapped into. That afternoon, I made the decision. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, and I'd been preparing myself for it in small, quiet ways over the past few weeks. But the time had come to end it, to take the next step. I called my lawyer, Richard, and told him to prepare the divorce papers. I wasn't just fighting for the inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my own dignity, my peace of mind, my future. Richard told me he'd have everything ready for me in a few days, but I knew that I couldn't wait. I had to do it now, and I had to confront Andrew. I knew exactly where I would do it, somewhere public, somewhere neutral, where I could keep control of the situation. A quiet cafe in the city. I arrived early, choosing a corner booth with a clear view of the door, my hands trembling slightly. I had my divorce papers ready, neatly packed in an envelope. Inside that envelope were the documents that would change everything. A flash drive containing all the evidence I had been gathering. Recordings of conversations, emails, video clips, even footage of Evelyn snooping through my office. I wasn't going to walk away quietly, not this time. Andrew arrived 5 minutes late, as I had expected. He walked in, dressed in his usual business casual attire, his face carrying a confused, almost amused expression. He had no idea what was coming. I could see it in his eyes. He thought this was going to be just another conversation, another attempt to smooth things over. But I wasn't going to play that game anymore. "Hey, Rachel," he said lightly, sliding into the chair across from me. "What's this about?" I didn't waste any time. I slid the envelope across the table, making sure he saw the weight of what was inside. He glanced at the envelope and then back at me, his expression flicking between curiosity and confusion. "What's this?" "Divorce papers," I said calmly. My voice didn't tremble, didn't waver. I was done. I'm ending our marriage, Andrew. This is over. He blinked, shocked, his face paling. Wait, you're serious? His voice dropped a notch, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Over money? No, I replied, locking eyes with him. I'm ending it because of disrespect, because of betrayal, because instead of grieving with me, you and your mother treated my father's death like an opportunity to cash in. This isn't about money, Andrew. This is about everything you've shown me since my father passed. It's about how you've turned our marriage into a transaction. Andrew leaned back in his chair, clearly struggling to process what was happening. Wait a minute, he said, running a hand through his hair. You can't just end our marriage over this. You're really going to walk away from everything? From us? Just because of some money? I didn't flinch. This isn't about money. It's about how you've acted since my father passed. It's about how little you've cared about me, about my grief. How you've seen my father's death as just a way to get richer. I've been trying to hold on to something that isn't even there anymore. You've been trying to manipulate me, and I'm done. Andrew reached for the envelope, his hand trembling slightly, but I slid it out of his reach. He looked up at me, frustration clear on his face. What's this? He asked, his voice now laced with panic. There's also a flash drive, I said, my voice steady, my eyes never leaving his. I suggest you hand it over to your lawyer. It contains everything, the footage of your mother in my office, trying to steal the inheritance documents. It has audio recordings, screenshots of emails, conversations. It's all there. Andrew's face drained of color. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, in a low, almost defeated voice, he said, You planned this, didn't you? You've been setting this up for weeks. I didn't hesitate. Number you did. I'm just responding. I didn't want any of this. But I'm not going to sit by and let you destroy everything my father worked for. Andrew's face tightened. His jaw clenched, and I could see the anger bubbling up inside him. You're making a huge mistake, Rachel, he spat, his voice rising. You think you can just walk away from all of this? From me? You think you're better than this? I stood up, my hands trembling, but not from fear. This was the moment of clarity. This was the moment I realized that I wasn't just walking away from a marriage. I was walking away from a version of myself that had allowed this to happen. I was reclaiming my life, my future. Goodbye, Andrew, I said quietly, but with all the strength I could muster. I hope you get what you want, because I'm done. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the cool air hitting my face as I stepped outside. I felt the weight of everything finally lift off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. The world didn't feel heavy. It felt free. I wasn't walking away in anger. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was walking away with my head held high, with my dignity intact. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave, especially when you realize that you deserve better than what you've been given. And just like that, I was ready to start over, to move forward, to protect my future.